And now, a message from our sponsor, CyberReason. Cybersecurity defenders don't fear ransomware, they end it. With CyberReason, defenders detect and stop ransomware that even others miss. A promise backed by their $1 million breach warranty. At CyberReason, they don't fear ransomware, they end it. Learn more at cyberreason.com. APT31 casts its net into some waters that aren't yet fished out. Vulnerabilities in the NicheStack TCP/IP stack are reported. LemonDuck may be outgrowing its beginnings as a cryptojacking botnet. A large marketing database is found exposed. NSA and CISA offer advice on securing Kubernetes clusters. Darrah from ZeroFox checks in from the floor at BlackHat. Our guests are Fillingham and Natalia Godyla from Microsoft's Security Unlocked podcast. David Dufour from Webroot on the hidden costs of ransomware. And Huawei's CFO returns to court as her extradition hearings enter their endgame. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. Positive Technologies, the Moscow-based security company with operations in multiple countries, late yesterday reported widespread activity by APT31, also known as Zirconium, Judgment Panda, and Hurricane Panda, a Chinese cyber espionage group usually associated with collection against governments in pursuit of Beijing's strategic goals. Between January and July of this year, the campaign used phishing emails to prospect targets in Mongolia, Canada, Belarus, the United States, and, unusually, Russia. Positive Technologies, close to the Russian government and to participate in the Gossopka information sharing system that Russia's CERT oversees, intends to keep Russian organizations, in particular, apprised of APT31's activities. The company believes this marks Hurricane Panda's first significant effort against Russian targets. It also expects the activity to continue, at least over the near term. Since the Hurricane Panda's typical approach has been through phishing emails, the usual cautions about proper suspicion and skepticism with respect to the stuff that shows up in your inbox would apply. Security firm Forescout and security research shop JFrog this morning disclosed their discovery of 14 vulnerabilities in the NicheStack TCP/IP stack, widely used in OT and industrial IoT environments. The vulnerabilities could be exploited for remote code execution, denial of service, information theft, TCP spoofing, or DNS cache poisoning. Recommended mitigations include prompt application of patches when they're available, network segmentation, and blocking unused protocols. Forescout sensibly acknowledges the difficulty of patching operational systems with their mission criticality and multiple dependencies, and offers a range of things organizations can do until they're able to apply available fixes. The LemonDuck botnet, once known as a small potatoes cryptojacking operation, has outgrown its origins, the record reports. It's become massive and is showing signs of expanding its capabilities to include hands-on keyboard intrusions into hacked networks. This suggests a possible move into ransomware or destructive attacks in the near future. Researchers at security firm Guardicore first described LemonDuck in 2019, and Microsoft, within the past 2 weeks, devoted a 2-part series to LemonDuck and LemonCat. As is usually the case, the bad actors run by many names. It would be convenient to simply call them Legion. LemonDuck is now a cross-platform threat, infesting both Windows and Linux systems, and it also operates as a loader. We disclose again that Microsoft is a CyberWire partner. The Guardicore malware analyst, Ophir Harpaz, who first noticed LemonDuck back in the day, told The Record that it began as a classic spray-and-pray cryptojacker, but even in its early stages, LemonDuck, while small, seemed to be serious about its business and determined to build for the future. They showed strong technical chops, for one thing. Quote, their multi-stage PowerShell scripts were more complex and obfuscated than others, and they already made extensive use of open-source tools for code execution and infection, end quote. And some of the features Microsoft called out were there from the get-go. Credential theft, removal of security controls, and lateral movement, they were all there from the very start. So for now, while LemonDuck remains a mining operation, we may be seeing an incipient entrant into the criminal-to-criminal ransomware-as-a-service sector. The annual BlackHat conference is officially underway in Las Vegas, albeit with lighter crowds, as many have chosen to sit this one out thanks to COVID. I checked in with ZeroFox's Darrah from the BlackHat show floor to get his sense for how it's going.
We anticipated the same thing everybody else was anticipating. We were watching the news closely on what BlackHat had in mind as far as like rules, regulations, best practices. And I will say that they're doing a great job so far in, people are being very courteous. People are being kind, respectful of maybe not wanting to be so close, shake hands and stuff. But, in the run up to it all, at the end of the day, we expected a lot less people to show up. I mean, some pretty major vendors, we had heard pulled out. And judging by the floor right now, you can definitely tell that it's definitely been tamed a bit as far as vendor participation and even like user participation. But, we just decided that it would still be worth our time and our efforts to be safe, to be reasonable, and to give people an opportunity to meet with us in person, because those relationships matter. And I think people are excited to, meet with each other face to face in a reasonably safe manner as is possible. So we just went for it, man.
I've heard folks say that when you have a year like this where attendance is down, it might not actually be such a bad thing because you get to spend more time with the folks who are interested in having a substantive conversation. You can actually step aside and have the time you need to make those things happen.
Yeah, so I happen to agree with that. You definitely don't want people to get the impression that you're not caring, you're not attentive to what they're doing. So if you're sitting, if you're sitting at a booth or walking down the hallway, you see somebody that you definitely want to give them the time they deserve. So this year definitely will afford us that opportunity. However, in the opening hours, we are still seeing quite a rush. So we'll see if that dies down as the days continue. But I happen to agree with you. I really love and prefer taking the time one-on-one to be thoughtful with my answers, to be substantively accurate with my answers, and make sure we're resolving the concerns or seeing things through to the end. So, yeah, that's definitely the vibe this year, I think, is what I'm seeing so far.
What about beyond the show itself? A big part of events like this are being able to get together with friends and colleagues you don't get to see very often. Are those sorts of things still happening?
Absolutely. Wow, that's loud. Yeah, very effective. Yes. So those things are happening. Based on just my personal preferences, I find it quite therapeutic to be back in person, talking to people, shaking hands, giving hugs, high fives, elbow high fives, whatever people are comfortable with. It definitely provides an added layer of trust in the security business. I think trust is paramount. Mutual trust and respect is paramount. And to be able to reestablish that in-person, face-to-face, touch, talking, just all those things are great. And they are happening outside of the venue itself, which is really refreshing to see.
That's Darrah from ZeroFox. VPN Mentor reports finding an unsecured database maintained by business-to-business marketing firm One More Lead. The database included personal data on between 63 million and 126 million people in the U.S. One More Lead secured the data when VPN Mentor contacted them. How the data were collected in the first place remains unclear, and VPN Mentor speculates about possible connections to earlier incidents involving other marketing outfits. NSA and CISA issued joint guidance on Kubernetes configurations intended to help organizations build and maintain secure Kubernetes clusters. The two agencies explain, quote, Kubernetes is an open-source system that automates the deployment, scaling, and management of applications run in containers. Kubernetes clusters are often hosted in a cloud environment and provide increased flexibility from traditional software platforms. The report details recommendations to harden Kubernetes systems. Primary actions include the scanning of containers and pods for vulnerabilities or misconfigurations, running containers and pods with the least privileges possible, and using network separation, firewalls, strong authentication, and log auditing. End quote. The advisory also details the reasons threat actors are interested in Kubernetes. Quote, Kubernetes is commonly targeted for three reasons: data theft, computational power theft, or denial of service. Data theft is traditionally the primary motivation. However, cyber actors may attempt to use Kubernetes to harness a network's underlying infrastructure for computational power for purposes such as cryptocurrency mining. End quote. And finally, the extradition hearing for Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou is entering its final stages out in Vancouver, where Canadian authorities are considering whether to honor the U.S. request that she be extradited to face charges related to alleged illegal Huawei trade with Iran. She's been in Vancouver since she was detained on a U.S. request in December of 2018. Bloomberg says that if you bet on form, the odds of Canada sending her south to the U.S. are about 100-1 in favor of extradition. The case involves some murky financing Huawei is said to have arranged with bankers at HSBC, involving a subsidiary or partner, the relationship was obscure, Skycom. Skycom is said to have tried to sell HP equipment to a service provider in Iran, which would constitute a violation of U.S. sanctions on Tehran. Meng is alleged to have lied about Skycom's true relationship to Huawei. An essay in light reading, while not particularly friendly to Huawei or blind to the questionable aspects of the company's operations that have brought it hostile U.S. security regulation, thinks the prosecution of Meng looks at this point vindictive, especially since she's been stuck in Vancouver, effectively under house arrest, for more than 2 years. And given the reach and effectiveness of U.S. sanctions on Huawei, if Meng's prosecution is intended as a further measure against the company, it seems to amount to making the rubble jump. In any event, the case is nearing its conclusion and should be decided soon. The latest round of hearings began today. And now, a word from our sponsor, ExtraHop, stopping advanced threats with network detection and response. Let's face it, cyber attackers have the advantage. ExtraHop is on a mission to help you take it back. Regain the upper hand with security that can't be undermined, outsmarted, or compromised. With complete visibility from ExtraHop, enterprises can detect malicious behavior, hunt advanced threats, and forensically investigate any incident with confidence. When you don't have to choose between protecting your business and moving it forward, that's security uncompromised. See how it works in the full product demo, free online at extrahop.com/cyber. That's extrahop.com/cyber. And we thank ExtraHop for sponsoring our show. We here at the CyberWire are very pleased to announce that another Microsoft cybersecurity podcast is joining the CyberWire Podcast Network. The show is called Microsoft Security Unlocked, and it's hosted by Natalia, Godyla, and Nick Fillingham, who join me with a preview of what to expect.
We're very fortunate. There's literally thousands of people at Microsoft working on security, be it, building AI, be it building product, and actually protecting customers. And so we are in a very fortunate position that we can send them an email and say, hey, we've got this little podcast and we think you're doing some cool stuff. Can we talk to you about it and try and bring to light some of the, the great, new techniques or research that's being uncovered on a daily basis. It's a very fun job. Natalia and I are very fortunate and we're very much enjoying the podcast.
Other than just having the massive Rolodex, we also are fortunate to have so many eager, new guests. The Microsoft security folks are so excited to share the work that they're doing. So you can feel that energy on the show. And it's also just awesome to continuously have new guests who want to come on and share the work that they're doing. It really speaks back to that mission-driven approach to security.
As the co-hosts and sort of the producers of this podcast, we really do want to make sure that we aren't just talking about Microsoft and Microsoft products. We actually try not to say the word Microsoft in the podcast or the names of the products, because that's not what this is about. This is about bringing to light the work that really, really talented and experienced people, dedicated folks, at Microsoft, really across the globe, are doing to protect, obviously ourselves and our customers, but also really trying to make the cyberspace sort of a safer place. Some of the more recent episodes we did. A very recent episode was about how do you have cybersecurity conversations with business partners that have no idea what cybersecurity is. So that wasn't a technical discussion at all. It was really about how do you talk to people that don't really understand your domain. And then we've also dived into the nuts and bolts of sort of the Rust programming language, and we've looked at how do you secure firmware, and we've really gone up and down the stack. We cover a very, very wide range of topics.
Natalia, I'm curious. You all are a few dozen episodes in now. What is the value proposition that you think the two of you bring to the table? Do each of you as co-hosts bring a different perspective to the program?
I don't know about perspective, but I do think that we tend to ask different questions, which is great. We complement each other in that way. I'm going to speak for both of us, Nick, but you can correct me. I think we're just both really interested in the cybersecurity domains. We have that inherent passion, and we're both very curious. And so we come to these episodes and speak to our guests with that perspective in mind, just eager to find out what they're doing, and eager to unlock that for, I used unlocked, look at that. Unlock that for our audience.
Well, one thing I'll add is I'm not a security professional. That's not my background. And, I've been at Microsoft a long time. I've sort of been in the technical space for a long time, but I don't come from a professional cybersecurity background. And so I actually use that, I hope, to the benefit of the audience. I hopefully get to ask some questions that maybe sometimes don't get asked because they're thought of as, sort of table stakes. So we do revisit a lot of those sort of fundamentals, and I hope that the audience sort of appreciates that, because we will from time to time come back and say, you know what, that's a sort of a buzzy word that we've used a lot there. Let's just sort of pause and sort of revisit what that means and wrap our head around that concept. So, I think, Natalia and I are 40-odd episodes in on this one, so we're starting to understand the space, but we're also sort of bringing to it that sort of fresh perspective of people that want to make sure that we're not glossing over a concept or an idea or a technique that may not be familiar to everybody.
Now, Nick, just for a point of clarification here, I mean, previously joining our CyberWire network was Microsoft Security Unlocked CISO series. This is Microsoft Security Unlocked in a bit of challenging branding differentiation there. Can you help us understand the difference between the two shows and so that people aren't confused and know why they should tune into this one?
Yeah, Dave, thanks. We'll get on trying to create some clarity there. We might need to revisit those brands. But yeah, there are two podcasts. The first one is Security Unlocked that Natalia and I co-host. That's a weekly podcast. We've been going for about 40 episodes now. And that's where we have conversations with, really anyone and everyone at Microsoft working on security. And we'll cover a really wide range of topics based on what's going on. Security Unlocked CISO series with Brett Arsenault, that actually came to the CyberWire earlier, a couple of months back, and that is with Microsoft's Chief Information Security Officer, our CISO, Brett Arsenault. We have been pestering Brett for years to allow us to create a podcast with him. He has the ultimate Rolodex, and so his podcast comes out every 2 weeks, and that's him having conversations with his security leader, colleagues at Microsoft, but also some of the CISOs of the biggest and most interesting companies out there. TikTok CISO, Lululemon, telcos, you name it. He knows them all, and that's what's happening on his podcast. I would say to CyberWire listeners, you should really subscribe to both and listen to both. But they are different podcasts. One is weekly, that's Natalia and myself, and then Brett comes out every 2 weeks where he chats to other CISOs.
I have to say, for our listeners who may not have yet checked out Security Unlocked, there is a tremendous amount of energy and a real sense of curiosity there that I think is contagious. And one of the things I like about it is that there's something for everyone. You can be someone who's just starting out on their journey, or someone who's a seasoned pro who's been at this for a while. And the spectrum of things that you all cover, as you say, is so wide. Everybody can get something out of it. It's time well spent. That's Natalia, Godyla, and Nick Fillingham. They are co-hosts of the Microsoft Security Unlocked podcast. You can find it on our website, thecyberwire.com, or wherever the fine podcasts are listed. It's time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Tanium. Today, no industry is exempt from the growing threat of ransomware. Ransom attacks against critical infrastructure, private companies, and municipalities are alarmingly more frequent and pervasive in 2021. IT and security leaders must act. Understanding network assets and their status is the first step to reducing an organization's attack surface, improving cyber resilience, and accelerating incident response. Check your environment today with Tanium's free cyber hygiene assessment. Visit tanium.com/cyber-hygiene-assessment. And we thank Tanium for sponsoring our show. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by David Dufour. He's the Vice President of Engineering and Cybersecurity at Webroot. David, it's always great to have you back. We've been seeing a lot in the news, obviously, about ransomware, certainly a hot topic. I wanted to touch base with you today about some of the things that are kind of running below the surface, some of those hidden costs that folks don't always think of when it comes to ransomware. What can you share with us today?
Yeah, David. So, yes, it is in the news everywhere. First of all, great to be back. Love being on the show. We think about the paying the ransom. We think about the folks who maybe you're not able to deliver your solutions or do business when you've been affected by ransomware. But there are a lot of other costs behind the scenes, some of them tangible, some of them intangible, that I think a lot of people need to think about.
Well, let's go through some of them together.
Well, operationally, one of the first things you have to think of, how much is it going to cost you to get back up and running? And that's not just, I have to restore some computers. There could be systems that went down hard that may be affected directly by how are you going to bring them back online. These large industrial systems, you don't just flip a power switch and turn them back on. You don't reboot them like a PC or something. There's a lot of effort operationally in bringing large industrial systems online, and that's something people aren't thinking about.
What other things are you thinking of here?
Well, there's the brand reputation. I mean, you and I, you can't really hurt our brand because our reputations are terrible.
The bottom can't go lower than zero.
That's exactly right. So we don't worry about that. But
no.
There's a lot of really good companies out there that this brand reputation is a big deal. And one of the things we say tongue in cheek is it's always nice to be the security guy of the competitor of the company that got hacked, because all of a sudden you're going to get a lot of money because you didn't get hacked, but your company doesn't want your brand to go bad. So if it happens in your industry and it's one hop over, that's when people start paying attention and saying, this really does affect our brand, and we've got to keep our reputation strong.
Right. What do I have to do, security person, to keep that from happening to us?
That's exactly right. And again, you might see it happen in healthcare, but recently here, if you're in oil and gas, you're like, well, we're not healthcare. We don't care about that. But I promise you, everyone who was a competitor of JBS, their security people got a bump in their annual budget.
Yeah, that's interesting. Any other ones that come to mind for you?
It's just a general shutdown of business. A lot of times people stop and they say, here's the cost if we want to, recover from ransomware, but they don't look at the bigger picture. And if you can somehow factor in that larger picture across your organization, it becomes a lot less cost efficient to be prepared for a ransomware attack. And that's easier to take to your senior management and your board and justify the cost.
What about the emotional impact to a company to have, I don't know, this sense of violation? It seems like it's hard to put a dollar sign on that.
That's something I haven't thought a lot about because usually we're in the middle of it trying to recover from it. But you're absolutely right. And not only that, you're wondering, will this happen again? Did I get everything? And so you're spending a lot of energy and a lot of cycles trying to make sure that you've done everything you can to prevent it. And then your folks are wondering, could it happen again?
Well, what sort of advice do you have for folks to make sure that they've got these things covered?
Well, back in the Stone Ages, David, back in the 80s and 90s when I first started in this industry, we spent so much time protecting against environmental disasters. We'd have multiple setups. There was no cloud. And we would spend a lot of time testing failovers, testing recoveries. And people just have lost sight of that. They don't spend the time that we used to. I guess when you spend, $20 million on a computer in the 80s, you're going to take the time to verify that it'll roll over. But now things have gotten so, grand but less expensive that we assume failover. So you need to take that time to ensure you can recover from things.
Yeah, it's interesting because it strikes me that so many people, they cut these corners because they think it may give them some sort of competitive advantage. And maybe they're just playing the odds that, whistling past the graveyard that it's not going to happen to us. But then when it does, boy, it can sure seem to be short-sighted.
You've nailed it because it is short-sighted. And if you get away with it, then I guess it's okay. But I think somehow as an industry, we talk about this a lot, but how do we get folks to consider, their posture, their defensive mechanisms that are in place really protect this company. And it's a cost of being a good company with a good reputation. So you want to do it rather than the stockholders always wanting, if it's a public company, always wanting, your low EBITDA and you're hitting your margins and all that. Like, how do you add that value in and convince people how critical it is?
Yeah.
And I did not answer your question. I put it out there as I don't know. But it's something we got to do.
No, it's not an easy question, but it's certainly, if you're the person standing in front of the board of directors and saying, boy, I really thought we were just crossing our fingers and hoping we'd be lucky. That's a hard conversation to face.
That's exactly right. And then you don't want to be the board that the security guy has a bunch of I told you so emails that said, I tried to bring this up, but you wouldn't listen. Like, right. Do you know what I mean? So we got to figure out some way to make this an equitable thing that people value so it actually adds value to an organization's bottom line and not a monetary value as much as this is a reassurance type thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, David Dufour, thanks for joining us.
Great being here, David.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible. If your company would like to reach 250,000 unique listeners every month, send us a note at thecyberwire.com/sponsor. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Trey Hester, Elliot Peltzman, Puru Prakash, Justin Sabi, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And now, a word from our sponsor, Verizon. Mitigate the risks and realize the benefits of digital transformation with the help of Verizon, a leader in cybersecurity managed and professional services for nearly 2 decades. From secure cloud computing solutions to advanced detection and response capabilities, Verizon helps secure data, networks, and infrastructure of many of the world's best-known organizations. Their annual Data Breach Investigations report is considered the gold standard of cybercrime research. And Verizon's leadership in network, wireless, and IoT connectivity makes it uniquely capable of protecting the ever-expanding attack surface. Let Verizon help you optimize your defenses and achieve the maximum return on your security investments. Learn more at verizonenterprise.com/products/security.